This episode was sponsored by Property, the leading real estate agent for all real estate transactions with a comprehensive ecosystem. They combine highly trained experts with the latest technologies on an intelligent platform to provide clients, brokers, and service partners with risk-free, flexible, and simplified services. Learn more at property.com. That's property with an I.com.
If you look at the statistics, 25% of dogs will die of cancer. This is an enormous amount. I even didn't know this until a few years ago when I was at a conference and I heard this. And then the veterinarian that was giving the speech, he said, when they get to the age of 10, 50% of them will die of cancer. And we all know, he went on saying, that the main reason is poor nutrition.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Thank you, Maria, for being here at the Swisspreneur podcast studio today. We're really excited to interview you and have our listeners tune into your journey with Loonawell.
Thank you very much, Ansuya, for the opportunity, and I look very much forward to this conversation.
All right, then let's get started.
Let's do it.
So Maria is the founder and CEO at Loonawell, a startup creating human-grade healthy food for dogs. Loonawell is the first mover to a new ultra-premium segment of the pet category. So Maria, we want to first get into your studies and the personal background to give a little backdrop of how you started this company. So you're originally from Portugal. You studied biomedical sciences as an exchange PhD student from Lisbon Medical School, and you went for 6 years to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute at Harvard Medical School. This was motivated by some volunteering you did during your bachelor's in Lisbon. If you can tell us a bit more about that, how this journey began.
Absolutely. So look, maybe a little bit of context. Since I was a kid, since I remember having memory, I've always been very fascinated with solving large problems. So I knew I wanted to dedicate my career, my life in general, to solving problems that could have a very positive impact in people's lives. This is, in fact, now that I actually look back from my 47-year-old stance, I can verbalize actually a lot better, and I've recently, and maybe we will get there, I've been thinking more and more about this. But to get to your question, very early on in my life, I knew I wanted to go into medicine-related topic. I wanted to contribute to curing a disease, if possible. I had in mind winning the Nobel Prize, so I am very ambitious. So if there's something to win on the way, I like it as well. But now, seriously, so during my studies, it became very apparent that cancer was one of these diseases where I would like to focus my studies. Mm-hmm. But as I was saying, what I realize now as I grow older, wiser, hopefully, is that, so for me, it's important to do something where I have a strong purpose. And I've used throughout my life this word purpose many times. But I think it's only now that I come to realize what for me that really means. So for me, purpose means it needs to have an objective component and an emotional component. So I understand now that I've always felt attracted by topics, professional topics that help me to solve these big problems, where I would have an influence solving these big problems. So that was number one of the equation of purpose. But it needs to have an emotional component as well. And what do I mean by that? It means that the topic that I'm solving or where I'm working needs to touch my heart, and I have to feel that I'm helping the lives of others, not just like curing the cancer by 10%, 5%, or contributing with a new vaccine, but I want to touch the lives of others. Yeah. And it's interesting because later on in my career, I realized when something was missing and I felt lost and I didn't know why. Now I understand. I look back and I come to realize why that is in my personal case. So while I was studying biology at the university, I already knew this cancer obsession that I had. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to do some volunteer work to, again, help others in need. And there was a cancer hospital close to the university. And I thought, oh, this is great. They have some openings for volunteers. And the work was basically, I started at a hairdresser. So you would help the professional hairdressers to host cancer patients and help them with these hair topics. And later on, I was also on the floor where the kids were receiving treatment. And I mean, this was beautiful and at the same time very, very hard. I have still very strong memories. This was a long time ago. But I lived firsthand, what the disease really means in someone's life and how it can shatter it apart. And later on in my own family, there have been several cases of cancer. So I got to live that even in a closer way. And so it became very clear that was it. So I was in the middle of my studies at the university, and I thought, that's it. I am going to pursue a PhD in cancer research. And when I have something so crystal clear in my mind, nothing can really stop me or get in the way. And so this is how I then got to my PhD. So I did, while I was studying, I did every course on earth you can imagine related to cancer research and where to go. And, all this determination always. I've been always like this in many aspects of my life. So I was studying university, but I thought, okay, now that I know what I want to do, why do I need to complete these studies? They're going to take me 5 years. So what do I decide to do? I decide to condense the studies in 3 years. So I finished earlier. And then I was actually invited to go to Dana-Farber, which was a very prestigious institution when it comes to cancer research. And I didn't really hesitate. So that was wonderful. And this is how, to come back to your question, a long story short, this is how that period is as a volunteer really shaped that desire to go abroad.
You were basically a woman on a mission, and you had your calling pretty much clear cut, from
yes.
It just came to you, so it makes sense. And a few years later to Switzerland. So tell us a bit also about what was it like living in these 4 different countries, and what was the work that brought you to these 4 different countries?
Yeah. So I moved to Spain because of love, not because of work. Yes, correct. So again, I like to have a very determined, strong plan, but I always tell myself, you can change the plan.
Yes.
Right? So you don't have to mandatorily do the same thing forever. So as I was doing my PhD, I met who then would become my husband. And he was living in Spain. And I thought, okay, that's it. I want to live this other part of my life. So I left when I finished the PhD. Then I thought I was going to stay in the States. But life threw me into Spain. And I thought, that's great. I'm going to continue my career in Spain. And so I did that. And for the next 7 years, I lived in Spain. But in general, I think now also reflecting and looking back, so I was in Spain for those 7 years. Then I moved to Switzerland, where I've been ever since. So over now, I think 12 years. And I like to think that as I go through life, I have sort of a backpack, I think we all have, where we put tools and knowledge and learnings. And I think these learnings are enriched if you get to live in different countries. And the reason being that every country has its culture, and that means it's different and particular way. Yeah, and also solving those challenges, right? You learn Portugal, for example, it's not a very rich country, so you learn how to do a lot with very little. This is a great skill to have as an entrepreneur.
Definitely.
In the States and at Harvard, I've seen how to do a lot surrounded by incredible resources that I've never imagined.
And enablers everywhere.
It's also very beautiful to live that other extreme. And now in Switzerland is somewhere in between. But, I think as an individual, you are pushed and challenged in different directions, and that helped me grow. But I think it also gave me a lot of tools that make me a stronger entrepreneur today. So, yes.
And you also said that on your Loonawell website that there was, the season of working in corporates that really drained you of the sense of purpose, and that you ran into some tricky situations. So was that what motivated you to then finally start your own company?
Look, again, and now looking back, because sometimes when I'm living the situation, I can't really verbalize everything and fully understand what's going on. And I think the experience in the corporate was, again, another, tool that goes in the toolbox. It was super important, and there's a lot of learnings that I'm now putting into place. But I did feel that I was derailing or moving apart from that sense of purpose. And there was an objective component. So I had a very good salary working in a company that was growing, leader. For the two large corporates I worked for, they were both leader in their field. So, right there at the front of knowledge, and that is exciting. But there was something missing, right? I felt that there was a component missing. And in a corporate career, as you move forward, you see how your role becomes more and more political because it's less about objective criteria and knowledge, where I feel so comfortable and I love being, but it's more about, politics. So opinions and bringing everyone on board and decision by committee, as I like to call it. Yeah, maybe I still don't know if I don't like it. I don't think I can say I don't like it, but maybe I was not ready then to just do that. Maybe not just do that. I mean, it's an important piece of a company, of course, to have an executive committee and well-formed executives, a board, etc. But I just didn't see myself there. And there was a particular moment I received an invitation. It's always these moments that make you somehow reflect and they sink in very deep and kind of like shake your foundations. And I remember receiving an invitation from this prestigious newspaper in Portugal. They were doing interviews with Portuguese women that had moved abroad and became, executives in their career. And they asked me if they could interview me. I said, oh, exciting. Yes, of course. So they were going to come to Switzerland and film me inside the company. And they sent me a list of questions. And the questions were all about what's the passion behind the job you're doing now. And I had no answer to all those questions. And when I got to the end of those questions, I still remember today very vividly. I thought to myself, I've totally derailed. I need to move. That's when it hit you. It really hit me strongly. And, sometimes I think I knew, but it's these things that maybe you don't want to solve everything every day. Sometimes you just want to live and go with the flow. But if it doesn't feel right, I have to move in another direction. And I knew I had derailed somehow from that sense of purpose that I like to live on the purpose. So I had derailed and I thought I have to stop here and put another gear and go in another direction.
Yes, and I think it's also a journey as a startup founder. Like you have those little gut feelings, you have that instincts kicking in every now and then if you're not having your own company. And over time, like there are different situations and scenarios that take you in that direction.
Absolutely. Whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I think, talking also with a lot of corporate colleagues, it just hits you. I think it's normal, whether it's a corporation or not. No matter which job you have, I think it's good to sometimes take the pulse and see, okay, does this make sense for me? Because, life is short and I want to live it happily.
Well, we're glad that you did that. And curious to also know, like, where did this just entrepreneurial drive come from? Like, is that something you saw as an example growing up? Or it was just, as you mentioned before, your instincts leading you there?
No, actually, in the family, I cannot say I come of a family of entrepreneurs, but I think I always had it there. I remember, again, being very little and setting up a little business at home, and then I realized if I set it up at home, I don't know, I was 6 years old, and I wanted to sell things in our house, things that we were not using, but then I realized, okay, there's not enough traffic, and,
Wow, already at 6 years.
This sense of wanting to... I wanted to earn and then, okay, I have objects that I can turn into cash and how does this work and volumes. And I think my dad also had a very important influence. He was an engineer throughout his career. And so he always worked in a manufacturing setting. So I knew from very early on, I remember visiting the industrial park where he worked. And he was telling me about these big issues that they had to solve and how they would address them. And I would find that very, very interesting. Yeah, again, I think the entrepreneurial spirit was always there. Yeah. Then it took me 42 years to have the courage to just do it.
Well, when the time is right, it happens, right? But you already started at 6, which is not something we hear quite often.
Yeah, but it's tiny, just like the concept of wanting to put a business in place. Yeah, I think I was going to end up doing it. I just didn't know where. I needed to build the skills and feel comfortable. A few years before launching Loonawell, I thought deeply, okay, maybe it's now. And at that time, I remember reflecting and going through a few questions, right? Do I have the financial stomach to do it right now? Am I ready? Do I have the network? The idea, is it solid? And I didn't have a yes to all those questions, so I decided it was not the time. Yeah. So I took another corporate job, and after a few years, I said, okay, it's going to be now. So I had a couple of ideas. I put some numbers behind. This was what I was doing actually at that time. I was doing strategy already for large corporates. So in this case, I started to do a strategy for my little corporation. And yeah, from those three ideas, it became very obvious that it was Loonawell.
So that was in 2020 when you decided to finally start Loonawell. Another big thing to discuss here was that you decided to start off as a solo founder, which is not easy to do. How was that like for you? And did you ever end up like regretting that decision?
Look, I get this question a lot, and I love it because at the beginning I was fascinated, like, why not the other way around? In the sense that, and hear me out, I never regret it. So for me, it just fits me like a glove for several reasons. But I actually went and you know, I always love objective criteria to substantiate my thoughts. So I went and I looked for statistics of what I'm going to tell you. So I learned that there's this professor, which is the author of The Founder's Dilemma. So he works for Harvard Business School. And he actually came out with a particular number. So 65% of high potential startups fail due to conflicts between co-founders. So one can say, you know, congratulations, Maria, for being a sole founder.
You avoided that piece.
But then there's more. You know, there's a study in MIT that says that solo founders are approximately 2.6 times more likely to have ongoing for-profit businesses. Like, again, you know, good for me. But of course, then there are the challenges, right? There's the challenge of burnout. There's the challenge of how do you ensure that your decisions are enriched and well thought through. Yes. And of course, there is a very real challenge, which I have lived through in my last seed round, which is the difficulty of attracting funding. So it is more difficult, I believe, for a sole founder than for a team. And this might be biased, right? Because of the statistics I've just told you, it should be the other way around. But I understand that at least very early on, if you don't have a consolidated team and a board and a structure, one can argue. And I heard this question from an investor, you know, if you die tomorrow, there's nobody that so early is going to replace you. Yeah. So, I mean, I do understand. But no, I mean, also from a personality point of view, I am a highly decisive person. I thrive in environments where I can have full accountability for performance. I have a clear vision of where I want to go with Loonawell. So, yeah, it just fits me.
That's perfect. And how did you first become aware that you wanted to solve the dire state of dog food?
Yeah. But maybe just to finalize, I have the feeling now reflecting to finalize the previous question, I think what it is, you know, so important for a sole founder, the sole founder topic is just the beginning of the journey. It's maybe might have these challenges, but I think as you grow and surround yourself by an incredible team, as I feel I have now, by a very strong board, which is that sounding, if it's a highly effective board, that the one I have now at Loonawell, then those challenges are dissipated. Right. And if you ask me that same question, what if I died tomorrow? Well, Loonawell can now continue, you know. So
you would have a successor in place as well.
No, well, maybe not so defined today, but it will come. And the knowledge is now, you know, it's not all in my head. It's now in the minds of several. And this is important, I think, the struggles. And now everyone is focusing on the growth that we're having because the numbers speaks for themselves. And this is now where we're concentrated. So,
I mean, like you mentioned, right, like because you had that clear vision and this decisive power in you in the beginning stages, I guess, a lot of times for solo founders or just any founding team, that's also the point where they're kicking off ideas with each other, distributing tasks. But that was something clear for you from the get-go. And then after that, as you started building your team and you had your board of advisors as well as your team, it already started becoming easier because you have now this, you know, ship with all the right crew sailing together with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a matter of you take decisions very fast. It doesn't mean that they're poor quality if you surround yourself with highly qualified individuals.
Yeah. That's great that it's working out for you
It
guys.
is.
And then going back to the next question I had, like, how did you get to the place where you became aware of, especially, this dire state for dogs and especially with the food? Yeah.
I've been a dog mom for a long time, over a decade. I have 2 dogs. I have another one that lives with my ex-husband. So I became aware of the poor state of the pet food industry a long, long time ago. And I say this because I think it's important that now I articulate it in a different way, which is I started living the pain point very early on. Right. And then if you look at my career, so I did my PhD in biomedical sciences, then my postdoc as well in these areas. Then I moved into business, and then I worked for large corporates in the human nutrition field. So, but in a way, all the knowledge that I kept collecting while being a dog mom helped me to understand, or to ask all those questions. Okay, what am I feeding my dog? And why does this ingredient appear on the label? But wait a second. This has been forbidden in human food, so why is it in dog food? And all these parallelisms between human food and dog food, I've lived throughout my career, right? So at some point I just said, and this is really at the origin of Loonawell, look, I'm fed up with all these, I'm so frustrated, and I do believe that frustration is really at the core of the change we see in the pet category right now. And I do believe I have the skills to make a change. So I want to make a difference. And if you look at the pet category, so a lot of the pet foods, and this is not novel what I'm telling you, this is really what's driving now the change and the growth that we see in the category and the new entrants, right? So everything is pointing out to a more natural type of food. And why? Because the category is being driven by this trend of humanization, which means that the pets are now sitting at the table. They're members of the family. And if you sit your dog at the table, and literally there are a lot of people who do that, or like myself, for example, we cook for our dogs almost every day. And so it becomes very simple to go to the supermarket. And if we buy 3 pork chops for us, we buy a few more for them. And we cook the same for everybody. And so, but then you need to know what you can give, what you can't give, the amount. So you become, because you've lived that frustration, you started learning and inquiring about which ingredients are good and the ones that are bad. And then you move on to look for alternatives that fit that trend you want for your dog. But there's an important component here, again, objective and with numbers, which is, if you look at the statistics, 25% of dogs will die of cancer. This is an enormous amount.
That is enormous.
And I even didn't know this until a few years ago when I was at a conference and I heard this. And then the veterinarian that was giving the speech, he said, and when they get to the age of 10, 50% of them will die of cancer. And we all know, he went on saying, that the main reason is poor nutrition.
Wow.
I mean, this is no surprise, because also in human nutrition, that when you eat poorly, it doesn't mean that there's a direct correlation.
But then inflammation.
Exactly.
So on and so forth.
Inflammation leads to, it's related to the onset of cancer and so on and so forth. So, I still remember being in that conference. I had goosebumps when he said that. He was closing the conference. And in that moment, I thought to myself, okay, but is the food I'm giving my dog then contributing to her death sentence? Basically, it boils down to this, right? So then I went and I started doing some more research, right? And I started looking into, okay, but what are the main ingredients that go into pet food? And one of the main ingredients are what is called meat meal or fish meal. So meat meal, if I tell you what meat meal is, do you know?
No, I don't know.
But it sounds like meat, right?
Yes.
Some sort of meat.
Yes.
The meal part is kind of confusing, but but you then, if you look at that, you think, okay, but some sort of meat, right? But it's not, actually. So meat meal, it's a legal term that is used. So officially, if you use what I'm going to tell you, you have to put this term in the package, whether it's meat meal or fish meal, which are all the derivatives. So whatever is left of, for example, of meat processing, right? So all the remains in the slaughterhouse, so the bones, the hooves, the hair, anything that is left behind after all the meat has been extracted for human consumption, everything that is left behind is then sold to the pet food industry. But it's not just that. In Europe, as well as in the US, you can use catering waste to go into pet food. Also, milk, eggs, and other ingredients that are no longer apt for human consumption, they can be sold and included into pet food. And of course, from maybe the eyes of a sustainability addict, you could say, oh, this is great, we're not leaving anything behind, but it's not great, because if you want to sit your pet at the table and give them highly nutritious food, then, we all understand that the nutrients and vitamins included in these ingredients that I just mentioned are not the same that a steak or a chop or even a broccoli contains. Right?
Yeah, they're living organisms that need healthy food. We can use this for, biocomposting.
For example, thank you very much. Exactly. But that's what's going on. And of course, that pets are the silent consumers, and poor things, they don't complain, because then what you see in most pet foods is that they are soaked in these flavors and fragrances to make it, 80% of the decision of a consumer to buy or not pet food is unfortunately how the food smells. Right. Not for the dog, but for themselves that are the purchaser. But that means nothing towards the, how healthy is this food. So if this is the norm in the pet food category, think of Loonawell at the complete other extreme. Yeah. So basically, I started the company by saying, look, there's going to be one fundamental core principle. We're only going to use ingredients that contribute positively to dogs' healthy nutrition. What does this mean in practical terms? So, when I say this sentence is a bit long, but it differentiates us from 99% of the competition. This means that we don't use any fillers. Fillers are kind of like in human nutrition. These are, for example, sugar, salt. So ingredients that have no nutritional component, but they occupy a lot of space. And they're commodities, being that they're very cheap, right? So
just empty calories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the pet category, this could be the meat meal, the fish meal, but also the corn flour, like all these ingredients that you see very frequently in pet food or in dog food, which is what I know the most, but they actually don't contribute to the nutritional content and what the dog needs to thrive. So at Loonawell, what we use is exactly the opposite. So we use the same raw materials that we would use in our own food. So our suppliers are the same suppliers that supply the restaurants in Zurich, for example, or, supermarkets, and we get exactly the same cuts, the same quality. On the fish, for example, take the dorade. So we include dorade in our products. I've learned that there are over 300 types of dorade that you can buy as a retailer. So we buy the top quality dorade. And it's not just because we want to exaggerate, it's because there's a reason why it's a top quality dorade, right? On the texture, on the flavor, and we want our dogs to have that experience. Yeah. So that's it. This is how we're pushing the boundaries.
It would be also very interesting to see, over the years, hopefully when Loonawell is widely adopted, how also you can, see how the dogs are living longer and healthier lives.
Absolutely. There's a very attractive scientific component. Yeah. But of course, when you tell an investor that you want to have a scientific important component in your startup company, their eyes are going to roll, because we are a manufacturer. Besides this ultra premium brand, we also have a manufacturing component in our company. So that means assets investment, right? Yeah. If you now come up with the science as well, this is going to be alarms in every balance sheet. So it's true. There's going to be a point where I will be very interested to prove that our food and our kind of diet has a very good impact in delaying or in removing those devastating numbers of cancer incidents in dogs. But it's going to take a little while, and some more funds.
And it will also be showing that the pet owners are also caring about their dogs, which has the added benefit that they are, buying them the best quality food and
Absolutely. Look, I had customers telling me, finally, there's a company that ticks all the box of my doubts. And basically, to be honest, when I launched Loonawell, I thought, okay, this is a bit provocative. Are there enough? At the end of the day, I knew that there were some, myself included, dog owners that were asking for something like this that was not available in the market. But the question basically, to make a profitable business, as you know, are there enough users, right? And the numbers will show. And I always love objective criteria. Let the numbers talk, right? So Now we're growing. There have been months this year that we grew 200%. There have been months that we grew 2,000% versus last year. Wow. So on average, we're at 800% growth. The category grows at 6%. I think it means we're going in the right direction.
For themselves, yeah.
Right?
Excellent. And I wanted to also get into a bit more about the ingredients that are involved. I mean, also because you are certified with the Swiss Vitamin Institute label.
Correct.
Is that correct? Yes.
Look, when you want to do something in the pet category that is very healthy and stands out, I think this is kind of like an onion that we're building, right? And there's different layers. So our products are organic. So it means that the raw materials that we source, they're not just like, I think over 80% are from Switzerland. So as much as possible, we source from around us, from around here, for several reasons. Quality being number one. And then there's the topic of human grade. So it means that you can eat it too. Yeah. So everything we produce in collaboration with an executive chef to make sure that it's not just delicious for the dogs, but the humans can savor it as well, because that is going to build into the component of trust, right? That it's going to counteract that frustration that I told you about. And then when I launched the first 4 products, these were treats, the vegetarian treats, I wanted to do the most extensive label you will find in the category. So this is what we have now. When you look at our labels, we put everything in a very transparent manner, from the list of ingredients to then the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids. We have nothing to hide, basically. It's on the contrary. We are excited to talk about everything that these ingredients bring to a dog's food. So we want to list everything, and
that's
therefore
great, because I don't even see that with human food. Like sometimes it's just like some amalgators or some whatever,
It's impressive, and all these names that they're so hard to understand what they mean, right? Yeah. You almost need to have a degree to understand what you're eating, unfortunately. So we wanted to simplify that, bring ingredients that you're knowledgeable about and that you recognize in your own food, but then also a very complete list of these minerals, vitamins, and so on. And when you're dealing with natural ingredients and you don't want to add synthetic ingredients, the Swiss Vitamin Institute, for example, it comes as an accreditation that in those products where we use this symbol, they accredit that the vitamins we say are contained in there are in fact contained. And why is this important? Because, in natural products is always a bit hard because it depends on the crops, on the quality. There's organic broccoli and organic broccoli, right? You would be surprised. So are you using the stem of the broccoli or are you using the floret of the broccoli? So everything can have a very big impact in the quality of the final product. So we were very proud of how we were manufacturing our products, and the Swiss Vitamin Institute comes to add on to that.
Wow. So if I'm ever hungry and I have a Loonawell snack lying around, it's definitely going to give me a lot of nutrition as well.
Absolutely. I tell you, if you get a chance to open one of our complete food cans that we just launched now in July, you're going to be delighted. And we've done this experiment. This is an experiment that our investors and myself as well, we've done at home, which is you invite your friends and then you put some snacks on the table and you blend in some Loonawell, either the food or the treats, and everyone falls for it.
Wow.
And asks, oh, so delicious. Where'd you get this from?
And so you also mentioned that you work with an executive chef to come up with the recipes. Can you tell us a bit about how that process has been?
Yes, absolutely. Look, not just the executive chef, but actually to develop the food, the way we came about was we got together the food scientist, Christina, myself, from the biomedical point of view, our veterinary nutritionist, and then our executive chef. And we asked ourselves, what would be the criteria? So everyone had the homework to build a list of criteria that they would like to see in dog food in order to call it excellent. So everyone built their own list. We put the lists together. There were a lot of commonalities. And then we came up with a list of 14 elements. And we said every product we're going to launch has to obey by these 14 principles that we now call in the company the excellence list. So this is how our food came about. So every complete dog food that you now see on the market from Loonawell, there's 5 products at the moment of complete food, they all obey to this list. And of course, when you are in a privileged situation of developing a product like that, all you want to do is talk about it because finally.
Yeah. But does it ever like come to you that maybe your competitors could take away your idea or this excellence list, for example, and try to do the same thing?
Of course. I mean, it's like a Michelin star restaurant,
Yeah.
right? Are there other Michelin star restaurants? Yes. Can you copy the recipe? Can you're served the plates in front of you, and then you can try to, back engineer that plate. Does that mean that we're all going to be Michelin star restaurants? No. For the existing players in the pet category to come into our field, it's going to be a little difficult, and that has to do with pricing, right? So if your customers are used to certain pricing, and now you would increase the price to 30, 40, 50% more just because you want to start using this, if you want to be truth, right? If you want to not just tell the story, but actually substantiate it with the same kind of raw materials, with the same kind of quality, with the same kind of sustainable packaging, that all has a cost. So you're going to end up in the same ballpark where we are, and your customers are going to leave you behind, right? So it's going to be hard. Are new entrants going to come in? I hope so, because the pie is too big, and if new entrants come in, they're going to help us expand the pie, and by pie I mean, right, the overall attainable business, and this is healthy and it's good. Come on board. But we're heading, and that comes with advantages.
That's true. I mean, you're leading the way, and you're making actually a new market for this that was very much needed before, and people didn't have that quality.
It's a new segment in the pet category. I think it was missing. There are brands out there pushing for a more natural. But the way we saw it is that there was always a little bit something missing. Either, you have this fresh food, but it looks a bit like a mash of things, and that you no longer recognize the ingredients, and then the smell is sometimes a bit oof. And then it comes in a plastic bag, and you think, honestly, a new brand, and here we go again with a single-use plastic bag. There's always a piece that is not well fit. You know what I'm saying? And so I think at Loonawell, we're trying always to look from every angle. Yeah. We put a lot of effort in the quality of the food or the treats, but also a lot of effort in choosing the packaging, for example. So when we developed the pâtés that we launched in December last year, we were looking for, when you're looking for aluminium tubes, we decided that we're going to put the pâtés in aluminium tubes. You can choose virgin aluminium or post-consumer recycled aluminium. And we went for the post-consumer recycled aluminium. It's more expensive by far, and it's more malleable. So it comes with a lot of disadvantages. So when you're shipped, for example, direct to consumers, sometimes if you're not careful, one tube can pierce another tube. And so, but again, we're saying, okay, but this is the direction where we want to go. Yeah. When we looked for packaging for the food or for the treats, we always say for the treats, for example, no plastic. We say no to single-use plastic. I mean, this is very difficult because every time you're looking for a package, the plastic shows it's the number one and it's cheap. And so it means you're going to be able to have a higher margin. And so the dilemma is always there. But like we stay truthful to the quality of our ingredients, we stay truthful to our urge to go against these norms and just say, no, we bring a higher quality packaging. Because the story needs to be, it's not just a story, it's our values. They need to be reflected. And so no compromise, zero compromise.
And is that something that you can actually sort of calculate and inform the consumers about, like how sustainable the packaging is? Is that information that you're sharing or?
Absolutely. Okay. So we try to share on our website, through social media. But you're right. And you're hitting a point that it's, I think, sometimes a challenge of first movers into a new segment, especially if it's a new ultra premium segment within an existing category. Which is, it comes with, education, maybe it's not the right word, but it comes with sharing knowledge. The consumer needs to understand, why they're paying that higher price. But I think it has been very enlightening, this journey so far, because we've learned now, it's no longer Maria in her home developing this idea and, there are going to be consumers out there. No, we see that there are, and they share their thought process with us. And we receive really constructive feedback most of the times. And I think the moment they feel that we're solving their pain point, everything else just trickles, It comes into place. Oh, I love the packaging. But if the quality of the product is there and you feel at the end of the day, you can also look at this as a matter of allocation, because think about it. You have a certain budget. Either you allocate it to food and the vet, right? In equal parts, for example, or you do Loonawell and you go less to the vet. I mean, you can boil it down. It's the same for us humans. You go on a poor diet and you're going to have consequences, medical consequences. We know this. Or you're going to be on a very healthy diet and do sports and so on and so forth. And you're going to live a much happier, healthier life. It's no different for dogs. So how do you want to allocate your budget? I'm sure you want your dog to be healthy.
So if we just had to sort of summarize it in terms of how you develop the full product, how would you distribute the percentage of importance given between obviously the medical science of what you're producing in terms of food, the nutritional aspect, as well as how you're sourcing the ingredients and the packaging and sustainability part of it? Like,
it's equally. Once the science is done and we say, okay, we know how the concussion is going to look like, so the formula, then we say, okay, it's time to start thinking about the packaging. Actually, this happens in parallel because, of course, as you're thinking about the manufacturing process, you already need to have the packaging in mind because every packaging is going to need different processes. So you do this in parallel, but there's just no, well, we're going to dedicate, on the packaging. If it's not perfect, it's okay. No, right? It's going to be the best we can find. And I give you an example that maybe challenges this a bit, right? Which is the treats. So when we did the treats, the big treats, they come in a cardboard box from Sustainable Forestry, but inside the box you have the sachets, and each sachet contains 6 cookies. This is done in a way because when you have the sachets as a Ziploc, so you can open and close and the treats remain fresh. And the reason was that here, the rationale behind is that we're not using any preservatives, humectants, and so on. So for the treats to keep fresh and tasty and not go rancid and stale, you don't want to give a stale treat to your dog. I'm sure they won't complain, but it's not what we want. We decided to use the package as an adjuvant, as part of the product, let's say. So the packaging serves the purpose of keeping the treats fresh. Now, is the packaging recyclable, for example? That sachet? No. Is this what we wanted to have? No. Is there an alternative today in the market that allows for you not to use all these artificial ingredients and still have a fresh baked treat? The answer is no. There is a lot of packaging that is being developed that is compostable, this and that. But the truth is, when you test that packaging for humidity, for oxygen, for oxygen permeability, since the oxygen is the number one enemy of shelf life of a baked good, the packaging doesn't perform. So here, a very important decision was, okay, we're not 100% happy with this, but are we going to go in the direction of, detriment to our product, to the quality of our product, to fulfill the sustainability aspect? No. We have to stay and find, here we found a compromise, right? The sachets are not recyclable the way they are. You would have to peel the layers and just recycle the outer part and not the inner part, which is not very suitable. So those sachets are not recyclable. Everything else, the cans, the aluminum tubes, even the fact that as a company, we don't have a car. Right? We do deliveries to B2B, to this, to that. We could use a car as a company, but we don't have a car. We don't have cars. So, every aspect of our daily business life, from the product to the way we set up the business, is thought in a way to be sustainable. Is that always 100% possible? No. So the quality of the product is always going to be number one. But the attention is the same. It's just then you have to make a decision.
And when we talk about shelf life, like how would you compare the shelf life of your products to the other products that are sold in dog food out there, given that you are also doing a much more natural processing with the food?
The shelf life is shorter in general. They take the baked treats or take the pâtés, so we use natural antioxidants, but there's a huge amount of synthetic ingredients that you could use to elongate the shelf life. But then it goes a bit against... take human nutrition, for example. I always like to use the simile, so it's easier to get the picture, which is we all know today that processed food is not great, is not healthy. Let's put it this way. It's delicious sometimes and tasty and salty and yummy, but it's not healthy. So the healthier option you can find is, or you can have for yourself, is to buy the raw materials fresh in the supermarket, cook them at home, have them, and that's it. right? This is the healthiest option. Now, is it suitable for an everyday life? Not always. But it's the same for dogs. It's just no different.
Yeah.
So a can that lasts for 30 years on the shelf, it's not good. It's not going to be good. There's nothing fresh anymore there at the end of 30 years.
Yes.
And the amount of synthetic ingredients that are in there to make that food survive all that time, it's not something you want to ingest. You know, this is what I've realized, is that in the pet category, not just what sustains shelf life, but also the ingredients that we talked about, the meat meals and the fish meals. Is this something you want to feed your dog? Are all these synthetic ingredients something you want to feed your dog? No. They're not healthy. They don't contribute for them to have a better neurological development, to be happier and bouncier. And no, on the contrary, they're going to contribute for them to become very unhealthy. Yeah. So why would you buy any of this?
Makes total sense. Yeah. So which countries do you ship to, and where have you seen most customers coming from?
Yes, so it's interesting because at the beginning, you know, I developed my strategy on paper. So I had the idea, I'm going to start selling in these countries that have the highest spend per dog. But then the reality just doesn't work like that. I started selling online in December 2020, and I started having quite a broad set of customers from day one. It was interesting to see. But today, let's say we ship to over 40 countries across 5 continents, direct to consumer. We also have B2B in different countries. But let's say the top 4, so we have, of course, Switzerland's our home base, but United States is the big bulk. The UK, France, Switzerland, these are the top 4, I would say.
And let's talk also a little bit about, you know, that you're not technically allowed to advertise your products as both fit for pet consumption and for human consumption. So why is that the case?
This is a super interesting topic. So yes, of course, that when you have a product like ours that is human grade quality, developed in collaboration with the chef, so, you know, you're very tempted to do all sorts of marketing and advertising, as you can imagine. But yeah, so the feed law, which is the law that governs the food for animals, and the food law, so the food for humans, they are mutually exclusive. And this is based on the fact that, you know, when I was describing the quality of the ingredients that go into the pet category, you can imagine how the food law wants to make sure that those ingredients never reach human food product, right? Because the ingredients that are used in the pet category are mostly non-apt for human consumption. So the law needed to make sure that it was very clear that no product could be marketed for both categories. Now, as many food laws or feed laws, they are not... Yeah, they were done many years ago, decades ago, and you know, it's interesting. And I've seen this many times before in food categories, which is decades ago, the law would sort of like take the lead, right, in the direction of the market. But nowadays, the consumer changes. What the consumer trends, they kind of like lead, and then the law comes behind and needs to catch up and say, oh, okay, we have this natural trend, the humanization trend of the pet category. Pets are sitting at the table. What? Human grade food? What is this? Oh, okay. You know, we need to update the law. Right. And so there have been some very interesting cases. Some of them reached the court in California, if I'm not mistaken, about this human grade topic and how to, you know, bring some more legal substance behind it. But it's still in early stages. So yeah, at the moment, we cannot market a product for humans and for dogs at the same time because the law doesn't allow.
Okay. And you recently came up also with a subscription model as well on your website.
Correct. I mean, this is subscription for dogs. Of course, it's relevant because once you find the food that fits your dog, you kind of like want to put that in autopilot and just order the same amount more or less every month. But we started with subscription early on, also when we just had treats, which was quite interesting because this really challenged us. We thought, okay, this is not going to work because treats is the thing that you can, you know, in your dog's diet that you can change. Treats should not go beyond 10% of the total daily consumption.
It's like us eating chocolates, which you won't do as a main food meal.
Exactly. And, today you buy a chocolate from this brand, tomorrow from another brand. So, how often is your return consumer rate to the same brand? So not how often, how high. So, but it's true that we started seeing, we had really high returning customer rates just when we had treats. So sometimes above 40%, which for an e-commerce store is quite high. And we started the subscription model, and it was growing, even to my surprise, because I was the one who thought, okay, I'm going to install it. But I'm sure we're not going to see great adoption. So now at the moment, until we launched the food, we had about 18% of our revenue online comes from subscriptions.
Wow, impressive.
Not bad. And I think that with the food, now that we've launched the food, this number is going to increase, but I will tell you more in a year or so.
And has it been a struggle in general because of the higher price point also that your products have to educate customers on it, or you felt like it just naturally flowed because they could see the value of the products?
No, I mean, I think like when you are a first mover, there's always going to be a challenge for some consumers because look, there's different emotional reactions. There's the consumers that get it very quickly and they have the financial capacity to adopt this into their lives. And they say, okay, it makes sense for me, ticks all the boxes. I'm going to buy it for my dog every day. There's also the consumers who say, okay, I know I love it, but I can't afford it for an everyday choice. So I'm going to continue cooking for my dog and add Loonawell's products once in a while. And so, it reduces the overall cost at the end of the month. There's those who add our products as a topper. So just to imagine you're feeding your dog kibble, which is these dried croquettes, and then you want to once in a while give them a little something different. So you buy our products, or you just buy our treats and you don't buy the food. And there's those customers that have also voiced at the beginning, oh my God, this is so expensive. I don't get it. You can educate all you want, but you're always going to have this, right? And it's in every category.
Yeah.
Does that mean that tomorrow you're going to march in your store and say, oh my God, how can you sell a handbag at this price? No, because you understand that maybe for some people it's too expensive, but you know what? You don't have to buy it. There's a ton of handbags out there of all costs, colors and formats. So pick the one that suits you. And if you really want to have, I always tell our customers, sometimes they say, oh, but these treats are expensive. I say, look, buy a carrot, peel it and give it to your dog. It's very healthy and can be very affordable treat.
Yeah.
So yes, being a first mover into a new segment takes training and explaining and sharing what we're doing. But this is also part of the story. You need to put yourself out there and say, how did you decide to come about with these products and how did you develop them? We're very proud to share all of this. And so as the consumers listen, there are some that just come on board. And the question was always, okay, is this going to be enough of a number? Yeah. I think this was what investors challenged me on. And I said, okay, let the numbers speak. And this will continue to be, I think, to answer your question, there are people who get it and they are in a substantial amount. So yes, I think we are in a very good trajectory, and then you need to educate others to bring them on board as well. But I mean, everything. Think of the Apple when it was launched, right? Yeah. And now look at us. You have it, I have it. I mean, we don't think about it. Yeah. But at the beginning, I've read a lot about it. They had exactly some of the same issues. And for example, Apple, I found this super interesting. I think it's something that is happening with us as well. They first thought, okay, we're going to distribute our computers through existing retailers, and it was a problem. Why? Because the retailer felt it was difficult to explain the price point of an Apple computer that was so disparate from what existed at that point in the market. And when they felt it was complicated to explain, they just moved to selling where they felt most comfortable, which was the existing other alternatives. And then Apple realized and said, okay, wait a second, we're not projecting here our values correctly, so we need to open our own sales point and our own stores, have our own environment, and like this project our products in the right environment. And maybe we will reach the same point. Although I think some of retailers have already realized that it's very good to partner with a brand like ours for several reasons, but some others maybe will struggle more, and that will push us into who knows. maybe you see a Loonawell store in a couple of years.
I mean, just the fact that the customers are taking subscription on treats already speaks that the dogs are loving your treats, right? So the sales speak for themselves as well.
I think so. I think at this point we already, at the early stages, it was a lot about, okay, my idea and my vision, and now I just bring the numbers and they help me corroborate the story.
And so speaking of numbers, let's talk about how, you had the financial support from the beginning on. So you had raised 2 rounds with families and friends, which were convertible loans, a total of 500,000 Swiss francs between 2021 and 2022. You mentioned that you used the funds. One was to hire skills across the value chain to grow your team. We want to talk a bit about, how did you start off building a strong, cohesive culture because you had a distributed team in the initial years.
Correct. Look, it sort of started, so I first invested my own money to start the business and to put the first 4 products on the market, just to answer the question, is this viable, right? Before I bring on board any other people's money.
That was your proof of concept.
Yes, exactly. And so I launched the store with the 4 products, developed the manufacturing process, all of that on my own, with my own investment. So no risk to anyone else. But I started having sales from the moment I opened the store. So I thought, okay, well, I need to strengthen my IP portfolio. I need to start acquiring some assets. And this is when I did the first round of friends and family to 150. And so I also, of course, as you very well said, I needed skills along the value chain. So you cannot do everything on your own. And it's true, at the beginning, this was also during the pandemic. So everyone was remote. I had someone in Argentina, someone in Spain, someone here in Switzerland, so different skills in different areas. And the way, it's interesting, I find it now that I have a team here in Switzerland, I have just 1 remote employee at the moment, and the rest of us are based here in Zurich. It's sometimes more difficult because most of the team is here together, and we have to make sure that we include our team member that sits in Madrid as often as possible and make her part of this journey. But at the beginning, we were all remote. So there was no alternative, right? Everyone was working from their houses. Whether they were in a different country or not, it didn't really matter, right? It was COVID. You couldn't meet anyway. So, and it worked really well. But in hindsight now, I realize that there are some commonalities, I think, to make it work. In the sense that in our cases, for example, you need to have, it's better if you feel the pain point yourself of the, what I was describing before. So if you felt that your dog was sick in the past because of bad food, whatever. So these kind of experiences are important. They're going to make you a very passionate employee. And the other thing is, you have to have, of course, the profile for the startup that is fast-growing startup, but the passion for dogs, for animals, for nutrition, very important. You need most of our successful, I see now, team members, that everyone is a foodie. And it's, you come to realize that distance is really not an issue. Of course, that if you work in manufacturing, you have to be in the office every day, right? You have to manufacture. So there's also certain skills you cannot bring on board in a remote manner. And there's others that I think being remote is great because, goes back to the point that we were discussing at the beginning of having the different cultures. So at the moment, we're very small, but it's true. Not on purpose, but we're all from different nationalities. And I think that enriches the environment. And having some people remote, why not?
Bringing
if it's
different
necessary.
perspectives, so that works well.
Yes, and it works well for them. So they are excited in their own job and their daily activities. And again, it's then part, my responsibility to involve them and to bring them here once in a while and to make them feel like when there's a big celebration, we all go on a video call and I tell them, okay, you get a bottle of champagne over there, wherever you are, we get one here, and we all celebrate. Just these little details to make them feel part of your trajectory. And this is very important. I don't say we always do it the right way, but it's something I try to be mindful of and improve as much as I can.
And then the seed round of 3 million last July, which you did to acquire assets and grow your team. Because it's been a tough last couple of years for the startups in general, how difficult was it for you to raise your seed round last year? Also, we touched upon it a bit earlier, but even more so being a solo female founder.
It was very difficult. Nothing else to say. It's a very easy answer. It's a full-time job, I
Yeah.
think, always for a founder to raise funds. I think
Yeah.
that moment when you start warming up and then you open the round is a full-time job. But it was extremely difficult. This is when I realized, okay, being a sole founder, when you asked me before, did you ever regret? I didn't regret at that time, but I thought, wow, this could really kill the venture.
Yeah.
Of course, that then you think of the many other ways you could go about it. But if you want to raise 3 million as I wanted or more, it was very difficult. But, I also got what at that time it irritated me a lot. I got some harsh feedback, but it was put forward in an elegant manner. I had corporate investors that I had contacted at that time, also that I met throughout my career. And they told me, look, I think I still remember some of these conversations. And they said, look, nobody's going to invest in a woman solo founder. And especially in your situation, you are a company of 1 FTE. You have all skills hired part-time. And who are you? Why should I invest in you? You're not known. You haven't launched any other company before. And it irritated me at that time as I was hearing this, because I was thinking, okay, but then what do you want? You want an entrepreneur that has founded 20 established, very successful companies, a man preferably, because you just, somehow you believe that's
Their
better.
persona in their head.
Statistics don't prove your point. I got my numbers. But somehow, there's this persona, and I don't fit any of those boxes. So, but can you please have a look at my case in particular? And this is where, it gets convoluted, complicated, and they don't like to look at cases in particular. I think once you're not on the trend, whatever trend they consider to be successful, then you just don't fit the profile. But I remember at that time, this individual, he said something, look, I believe that you're not going to get an investment for someone who doesn't know you. Only people who know what you're able to do as a professional are going to invest in you. Yeah. And this was, for me, it just, I contacted 90 potential investors, including corporate investors, private investors, for the seed round. And I couldn't pull it off. And I thought, but wait a second, maybe what he's telling me, go back to so we are a total of 13 private investors, myself included. And the majority are people that I met throughout my career, which is indeed he was alluding to, he was saying people that know your value as a professional, they are the ones that are going to be able to invest in you. And so the 3 rounds that I've done so far were, not everyone participated in the same round, but there are people who participated in all rounds. And it's just, let's say, it's distributed across the 13 investors.
I mean, that also speaks to, that you having built that professional credibility over the years and then started your startup at, in your early 40s. It actually was a good thing to do in the end, because it helped you with the fundraising.
I think so. I think age, network, but proven track record that as a professional. So, for example, take Stuart Harris, the chairman of our board. He was my previous boss at Givaudan. So, these are individuals that I've worked with throughout my career. So in a way, they can attest as well. And if they're putting their own money in this venture, is because they think I'm going to succeed. Yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But again, I'm now delighted that we are in a stage where it's not just what people believe I can or can't do, but the numbers start to speak for themselves. And I think from now on will be easier, not easy. I think the climate is now a little bit, there's a bit more appetite to invest, but we're still in a very early stage, and we're planning Series A for next year. So stay tuned. I'm going to need all the help I can get. So let's see. Time will tell.
And what is the Loonawell team also looking forward to achieving next?
Now a very important component of our growth is the development of new products. So we went from having 4 treats to 6 treats. Then we launched 3 pâtés. Now we launched 5 types of food. What's coming next? So cannot disclose, but we're going to launch either at the end of this year, beginning of next year, 2 new products that are not the same that we've launched so far. So 2. Exciting. Very exciting. And after that, we have a very complete portfolio. A very complete pipeline of products and that we want to develop. So that is super important. Then, of course, is the growth in terms of channels and geographies. So I think the online business helps us a lot, and our early retail experience helps us to understand what works, what doesn't. And once we understand what works, I want to turn up the volume and say, okay, let's multiply by 10 what's working, right? So that's going to be proceeding, where the investment is going to go. And as you grow as a manufacturer, we are very, very lean, but you always need to acquire assets as you go. But yeah, our price structure is built in a way that hopefully our business will become profitable sooner rather than later. And so, yeah, we can grow in a good, healthy way.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing Loonawell growing. And how about for yourself? What is the next plan for you as an individual? Do you see a change in your role or taking on more responsibility? I mean, you're anyway running the company, so what could be more than that?
Look, I keep it open. I think at the beginning, when I launched this venture, I had one question in the back of my mind. Will I enjoy this role of CEO of a small business? Then it will become a bit-sized business. But I'm actually loving it. So it has been very, very enriching. So I am in no urge to give my seat. I think what will be important for me to understand, and of course this is always a conversation I will have with my board and my investors, is do I have the skills for the next step? I mean, I'm very critical with myself all the time. So I'm always going to be the first one asking these questions. And if I don't, then I have to bring someone else on board. And it's not dramatic, you know? Yeah, I feel very at peace. What I really, really want is for the business to grow and for us to realize my vision, which is to become the leader in the ultra premium segment of the pet category. I want to make that vision happen and to bring healthy products to dogs, and not just mine, but others around the globe. You know, by the time we achieve that, I'm still going to be the CEO or not. Those are minor details.
Yeah. Well, with your passion and drive, I can surely see that happening in the near future. And I wish you the best with that.
Thank you very much.
So as a last question, well, second last, I would like to ask you if there's any recommendations, any books, podcasts, anything that you would like to share with our listeners that has helped you in your startup journey. Even gadgets, for that matter, something that helps you sleep better or anything.
Well, I can recommend dogs.
Well, yes.
That has helped me a lot because life without a dog or life with a dog is very, very different. So that has brought a lot of joy, but also helps me in my day-to-day life to, I'm always in a hurry in a way. In my life, I've always been in a hurry. And I'm that kind of person that watches Netflix with, the fast forward button.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I keep clicking on the fast forward. Okay, I got it. Next. So it's terrible.
To the point.
Exactly. Can I get to the point? It's terrible if someone really wants to enjoy the full episode or movie. But I live life like that. And my dogs help me wind down a bit and just... enjoy the environment and the surroundings. And it's just beautiful to see them grow and see our relationship develop. So I can recommend that. But I think really important was as well, at the beginning when we were talking about purpose and how you align all of that. And I think it takes a lot of reflection.
Yes.
And I am a very reflective person. I love thinking about, I like understanding everything. And if I'm not feeling well in my life, or I'm unhappy, or I feel frustrated, or, it's just a feeling. But then how do I put words behind this feeling and numbers and, direction? And so I need to clarify that. I'm not someone who can live with that for a long time. I need to clarify. And to clarify, you need to get to know yourself, I believe, and to understand who you are, who you're not, who you want to become, the things you want to let go of, the things you want to do more of. And that takes reflection. And so there's been some authors that have helped me a lot. And I think they have a positive impact in who I am today, also as an entrepreneur. One of them has been the psychiatrist Irvin Yalom. He's based in the US. I think I've read all his books, and every book, down to the minor detail. I didn't fast forward any page because, it's a wise individual. So that his books made me reflect a lot. I also did therapy myself, and that was, I think, the best investment probably I've done in my entire life. And then I also, another author, unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago, Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Buddhist monk. There's one of his, I've read many of his books. One of them really spoke to me, which is Silence in a World Full of Noise. I think it's the title. And it talks about mindfulness. At that time, I was not sure what that was. And I started playing more and doing more of that. That was really beautiful. Yeah, and now I'm reading Outliving, which is another book that talks about longevity. So, I think books mostly is, I'm a reader. I'm an avid reader, so I don't listen much to podcasts. Or if I do once in a while, I don't have one in mind. Sorry, I fast forward. But do you have a summary?
No, but these are wonderful recommendations. We will surely put them in the description for our listeners to also check them out. And we would like to close this episode with a fun round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it. I don't know. Let's see.
Super easy ones. All right. If you had to choose Portugal, Spain, US, or Switzerland?
For what?
Living, preference, anything?
Oh,
yeah.
They're all amazing in different ways. I cannot choose.
Okay.
They're all good in different points of life, and it depends on where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. Yeah.
Makes sense. What's your favorite Loonawell treat to snack on?
Oh my God, I'm usually very decisive, but these questions are difficult, because I've developed the products, so they're all incredible. So I don't know. Let me put it the other way around. There's not a product I wouldn't snack on.
Okay. What's your favorite activity to do with your dog?
Just to go to the park, see them run and be happy, play with other dogs. I absolutely love it. I go in the mornings with them at 6:30. Now that it's getting darker, I go at 7. But I love it. It's one of these, and also the last walk of the day. Oh my goodness, it's just
pure joy and
beautiful.
action.
Really, really, it makes me very happy.
And what's your dog's favorite Loonawell treat?
So Max loves fish. So I have two Westies, a brother and a sister. Max loves fish, so he loves the salmon. He loves also the multivitamin. Luna loves the super foodies. Super foodies is with banana, blueberries. I think she's more of a sweet girl. She has a sweet tooth. But they both eat everything that is Loonawell. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this really insightful and inspiring conversation. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you today.
Likewise, Ansuya. Thank you very much.
And all the best for the future of Loonawell.
All right. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.